A simple phone call from Trump put Xi in a humiliating position before his own country because it revealed right in the Chinese capital what the Chinese regime tries to hide behind its self-sufficiency rhetoric. The Chinese machine still needs American technology to compete for the future. On May 14, 2026, Trump didn't need to raise his voice or turn the meeting into a spectacle. He did something more surgical. He picked up the phone, called Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, and brought to his side the man who commands the most coveted chips in global artificial intelligence. That's when Xi felt the blow. China can control factories, pressure markets, use rare earths as a weapon, and try to pose as the new owner of the global order, but it still depends on the United States to power the brain behind the new technological war. While the anti-Trump media tries to treat everything as favorable, as if it's just about delegations or trade agendas, the fact is much more serious. Trump brought into the dispute the living symbol of American power over artificial intelligence, data centers, advanced computing, and systems also used in military areas. Xi wanted to appear strong in front of his own people, but Jensen Huang's presença de Jensen Huang, showed that Beijing still does not control the main piece on the board. The design of the chips, intellectual property, the control systems, and the authorization to export advanced technology. It is the basis for artificial intelligence, defense, surveillance, and modern warfare. I'll tell you all about that in a moment, but right now you'll want to be subscribed to the channel to stay well informed with real-time information at the highest journalistic quality ever seen with the credibility standard of Milson Alves. China's dependence on NVIDIA was once almost total. Before the stricter restrictions from the United States, the company controlled nearly 95% of the Chinese market for advanced artificial intelligence chips. Even after American pressure and Beijing's attempt to strengthen domestic companies, data from IDC cited by Reuters indicate that NVIDIA still held about 55% of this market in 2025, while Chinese manufacturers reached approximately 41%. In other words, China is trying to break free, but it still depends on NVIDIA for more than half of its computing power, precisely in the sector that decides the future: artificial intelligence, data centers, and heavy computing. Recent news shows that this pressure didn't come out of nowhere. The US Congress has moved forward with the so-called Chip Security Act, a proposal to require tracking systems in artificial intelligence chips, subject to export control. The idea is to identify diversion, smuggling, and unauthorized use, especially when components sold for one destination end up operating in another. The bill was introduced in May 2025 and gained momentum because Washington knows that China tries to circumvent the restrictions by using intermediaries, shell companies, and routes through other Asian countries. The pressure increased because cases of American chip diversion started to appear more frequently. On another front, documents submitted to the House Committee on China mentioned allegations involving billions of dollars in servers with NVIDIA chips diverted to China through intermediary companies. The message to Xi was a stark one. If Beijing needs to hide where the chips are going, it's because it still hasn't mastered the technology on its own it claims to be ready to lead. China is trying to respond by using its strength in rare earths. This is the area where Xi still has real power. Critical minerals go into electric motors, defense, semiconductors, turbines, radars, and high-precision equipment. But this weapon also has its limits. In other words, Xi uses mineral leverage, but Trump uses technological pressure. The other front that worsened China's position was energy. During the meeting in Beijing, American officials indicated that Xi showed interest in increasing energy purchases from the United States, including American oil. Alaska was even mentioned. The explanation is straightforward. The crisis in the Strait of Hormuz made China's dependence on the Middle East more risky. Reuters reported that the White House treated this conversation as a way to reduce China's exposure to the Hormuz route. The very fact that the topic is on the table already shows a China under pressure from routes it doesn't fully control. This is the point that makes the call seem minor on the surface, but enormous at its core. Trump wasn't just dealing with him in a business meeting. He was pressuring Xi on three fronts at the same time: chips, energy, and strategic routes. In technology, China wants NVIDIA. In energy, China fears instability in Hormuz. In industrial supply chains, China tries to use rare earths, but sees the United States seeking alternatives with allies. With the tension involving Iran, ships, sanctions, and oil, China has come to need stability, precisely in the place where its most problematic allies and partners help to produce risk. History shows that the power that controls critical technology usually controls the pace of the competition. During the Cold War, the United States and its allies used export restrictions to limit Soviet access to advanced computers, precision equipment, and strategic technologies. The Soviet Union had territory, weapons, energy, and propaganda, but struggled to keep up with the Western technological leap. This lag didn't bring down Moscow on its own, but it helped increase the cost of competition. Now, the logic returns in a different form. The battlefield is not just tanks or missiles, it's chips, software, data centers, artificial intelligence, and supply chains. Asia understood that if China can't break this dependence, every Chinese advance might have to pass through a door controlled by the United States. Other nations also show how this dispute works. Japan grew as a semiconductor giant, but faced American pressure in the 1980s when Washington realized that the Japanese industry threatened sensitive areas of the United States economy. The Netherlands, with ASML machines, became the center of modern restrictions because their equipment is crucial for advanced chips. Taiwan became an essential player because even TSMC produces semiconductors that support American and Asian companies. South Korea is also affected by this dynamic since Samsung and SK Hynix depend on access to technology, markets, and rules imposed by the major powers. In all these examples, the lesson is the same. Whoever controls the most difficult stage of technology doesn't need to control everything. It's enough to control the right bottleneck. That's why Trump's call carries so much weight. It didn't destroy Xi with an explosion, threat, or military spectacle. It hurt Xi by damaging his image. The Chinese leader wants to be seen as the commander of an inevitable China, but the presence of Jensen Huang next to Trump exposed a dependency that Beijing doesn't like to admit. Now the likely sequence is more pressure, more bargaining, and more dispute over exceptions. NVIDIA wants the market, China wants access. The US Congress wants to track and block diversions. Trump wants to use all of this as a bargaining chip. Xi tries to prevent this dependence from looking like surrender. But the message has already gotten around. Trump's call wasn't just to send an executive on a trip. It was to show China a map of its own weakness. I'm Milson Alves, an international affairs specialist, and my purpose is to keep you well informed with the truth every day. The news links are in the video description. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and at the end, check out the comments so you can be even more engaged with the Milson Alves community.